Hello, my name is Mike Smith, and as part of the ongoing series on procedural texture basics, we're going to talk about different coordinate systems. Last video we did the UV coordinates. This video we're going to do the generated coordinates. So to do that, we're going to start just a new file, go into Blender. Again, I'm using 3.0. You can use the 2 series, it doesn't really matter. Do general, and I'm going to add a few shapes here so we can see how this works. So I'm going to go to add, mesh monkey, G for grab, X for x-axis, move it there. I'm using my middle mouse button to rotate the screen so we can see it. I'm going to go to add, mesh, UV sphere, grab, G, X for x-axis, move there. Okay, great. Now what we want to do is give them a texture that lets us see the coordinates in the coordinate system. So from our first tutorial, we're going to go to the shading tab. I'm going to select this guy. I'm going to put them all on the same material. So I've got the sphere, cube, and the monkey all on the same material. And in the material, I'm going to go to add, input, texture coordinate. And last time we used UV coordinates and plug those into the color, and we get that. This time we're going to take generated coordinates and plug those into the color, and we'll talk about what those are. So how do generated coordinates work? So generated coordinates provide, first of all, a 3D coordinate, a three-dimensional coordinate. So you may remember from UV coordinates, we just got X and Y. Well, you can see we've got some blue here, which means we've got X, Y, and Z. So what's happening here is all three of those coordinates, X, Y, and Z, in that order, are coming out of generated. Those are converted into a color. When we convert into a color, those are converted into red, green, and blue. So X becomes red, Y becomes green, and blue, Z becomes blue. So you can see those three colors on all of these. The cube makes it the easiest. How do those get mapped to the object? So the way that it works, and you can't see this very easily by default, so I'm going to go over here on the right-hand side to this object properties pane right there. I'm going to go down to viewport display here, and I'm going to click on texture space, and I'm going to do that for all three of these. For the cube, it's not very obvious what's happening, but for the other two, it adds this bounding box. And that is the answer to how these work. So the way that it generates this three-dimensional coordinate is that it creates a bounding box around the object. It maps 0, 0 to this corner. You can see where it's black, right? Because all the coordinates are 0, 0, 0, 0, sorry, to that corner, and 1, 1, 1 to this corner. And then any point that's on the object, it finds it in the three-dimensional space of this cube and just maps it to the coordinate of that point within the cube, where each side goes from 0 to 1. So on the cube itself, you can see most easily because it goes to the edges. And as I mentioned, you can see this is where all points are 0. You can see X goes this way. You can see Y goes that way. You can see Z goes that way. And if you look on the faces, you can see all those different colors combining, and all of them together reach the one value over here, which is why it's white. If you look at the other objects, you can see they're not right at the edge of the bounding box. So some of the colors, like the black corner, just isn't represented. But the bit it is represented, you can see aligns with the cube. Okay, so why would you want to use these? Well, for a lot of objects, especially, not that I'm going over these in this group, but procedurally generated objects, you may not have a nicely unwrapped UV map that does what you want. And so you may just be using the generated coordinates. You need some way to do it. There are other ways to generate coordinates. One of the things that the generated coordinates does, though, is it actually does not move. It doesn't change the position of a vertex in this coordinate system, even if you distort and displace and move around the object. So this is pretty important if you rig a character, let's say, or you, and I'll show a couple different operators we can apply to distort the object. Generally speaking, you want the texture to be sticky. You want whatever was on the eye of the monkey. You don't want that to fall on the nose just because the eye moved. You want it to stay with the eye. And generated coordinates do that. So I'll show some examples of that with the sphere. So if I go to the sphere, now I'm going to go over here. So I left-clicked on the sphere to select it, to modifier properties. And I'm not going to get into modifiers. I'm just using this to demonstrate what happens. Let's say we go to simple deform. That's going to, in this case, twist the object. So if you watch the colors, as the vector moves, the color on the vector stays the same, as opposed to changing the coordinate for that, sorry, not vector, vertex, changing the coordinate for that vertex as it moves through the space. So it applies the color to the vertex before the transformations. And we can see that happening. as I change this angle. So you can see as the vertices move, they keep their color that they had before they moved. So that's what generated coordinates are and why you might use them and how they work. Thanks.